The morning calm of the small-town police station was shattered when the door creaked open. Officer Ryan glanced up from his paperwork, expecting another mundane complaint. But what he saw made him freeze. A scruffy golden retriever, her fur matted with dirt, bounded in, panting heavily. Clutched gently in her jaws was a tiny, squirming puppy. The room fell silent as the officers exchanged bewildered glances. The dog padded to the center of the station, her ribs visible beneath her muddy coat, and carefully placed the puppy on the floor. For a moment she stood there, her eyes wide with desperation. Then, without hesitation, she spun around and bolted out the door. "What on earth?" Ryan muttered, rising from his desk. The tiny puppy let out a faint whimper, its frail body trembling on the cold tile floor. Before anyone could move, the golden retriever burst back in, this time carrying a second puppy. She repeated the same urgent routine, laying the pup beside the first before dashing out again. Officers stared, unsure whether to intervene or simply wait. Something about her frantic pace and the puppy's fragile state screamed urgency. What could drive a dog to do this? Whatever it was far worse than anyone imagined. Officer Ryan knelt beside the trembling puppy, its tiny frame barely larger than his hand. The little one let out a faint whimper, its eyes fluttering as if too weak to stay open. "Hey, little guy," Ryan murmured, his voice soft and steady. "Where's your mom?" As if on cue, the golden retriever burst back through the station door, her movements shaky but determined. This time she carried a third puppy, her fur streaked with fresh scratches and mud. She carefully laid the pup down next to its siblings, her chest heaving with exhaustion. The officers stood frozen, their confusion now replaced with growing concern. "This isn't normal," Officer Linda whispered, her brows furrowed. "Something's wrong." Ryan gently scooped up the first two puppies, cradling them in his arms. "Someone grab a blanket," he called out firmly, "and water. This dog's been through something." Linda hurried off, returning moments later with a soft blanket. She spread it on the floor and Ryan carefully placed the puppies down, watching as the mother dog staggered back through the door once more. This time she carried a fourth and final puppy. Her legs wobbled beneath her as she gently placed it alongside the others. Then with a faint whine, she collapsed onto the floor, too weak to move any further. The room fell silent as the officers gathered around her, concern etched across their faces. They exchanged quiet whispers. "Where did she come from?" one asked, his voice barely audible. Ryan knelt beside the dog, his hand gently stroking her matted fur. "I don't know," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "But whatever she's been through, she brought her pups here for a reason." The golden retriever looked up at him, her tired eyes filled with an emotion Ryan couldn't quite name. Gratitude? Desperation? Whatever it was, it struck a deep chord in his chest. She had risked everything against all odds to bring her puppies to safety. But why the police station? And what had driven her to this point? As the officers watched, the mother dog's breathing steadied slightly. Ryan placed a bowl of water near her. "Here you go, girl," he said gently. "You've done enough. Rest now." The dog lifted her head weakly, her tongue flicking out to lap at the water. Her eyes darted toward her puppies, who let out faint whimpers as they huddled together on the blanket. She gave a low, contented sigh, as though reassured that they were safe, at least for now. "We need to call animal control or a vet," Ryan said, standing and turning to Linda. "These pups are tiny, and she's completely exhausted. They need care." "I'm on it," Linda replied, already pulling out her phone. As she stepped away, Ryan knelt beside the dog again, running his hand over her muddy coat. He noticed the scratches on her legs and the burrs tangled in her fur. She had clearly been through something harrowing. "Where did you come from, huh?" he murmured. "What happened out there?" The dog didn't answer, of course, but her eyes spoke volumes. There was a depth to her gaze that seemed almost human, a mix of exhaustion and trust, as if she knew she had made the right choice by coming here. Ryan felt a pang of responsibility. She had chosen this place, this moment, to seek help. Now it was up to them to figure out why. The station, once bustling with the usual hum of activity, had fallen quiet. The weight of the situation seemed to settle over everyone. Ryan glanced at the golden retriever and her fragile puppies, and a thought gnawed at the back of his mind. This wasn't over. Whatever had driven her here was still out there, and it was only the beginning. The golden retriever lay on the blanket, her sides heaving with each labored breath. Ryan crouched beside her, speaking softly. "You've done your part, girl. We'll take it from here." He gently ran his hand over her muddy fur, careful not to press on any of the scratches or bruises. The puppies stirred beside her, their faint whimpers tugging at everyone's heartstrings. Linda returned, phone still in hand. "The vet's on their way," she announced. "They said they'll be here in 20 minutes. Ryan nodded, his relief evident. But even as he looked at the mother dog, another question gnawed at him. Why here? There were plenty of other places she could have gone. Shelters, homes, even the nearby park. Yet she had chosen the police station. It didn't make sense. The dog lifted her head suddenly, her ears twitching. A low, guttural whine escaped her throat, and her eyes fixed on the door. Ryan frowned, his instincts kicking in. "What is it, girl?" he asked, his voice calm but alert. The dog tried to stand, her legs wobbling beneath her. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, gently urging her to stay down. "Take it easy. You're safe now." But she wouldn't settle. Her gaze stayed locked on the door, her breathing quickening. It was as if she were trying to warn them about something. The unease in the room grew palpable, the officers exchanging worried glances. "You think someone's out there?" Linda asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but something spooked her." He stood and made his way toward the station's entrance, his hand resting instinctively on the holster at his side. The door creaked as he opened it slowly, stepping outside. The street was quiet, the usual hum of small-town life carrying on as normal. But as Ryan scanned the area, his eyes landed on something unusual. Far down the road, near the edge of the woods, a black truck was parked. Its engine idled, and the windows were tinted. Ryan's gut twisted. The vehicle didn't belong to anyone in town, and its presence here wasn't random. The dog's desperation, the scratches and exhaustion, it all pointed to something more sinister. Ryan stepped back inside, his mind racing. "There's a truck parked near the woods," he told Linda. "It doesn't look familiar. I think she might have been running from something, or someone." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. "You think she was being chased?" Linda asked. Ryan nodded. "It's possible, and if that's the case, whoever was after her might still be out there." The golden retriever, now lying back down, glanced nervously toward the door. Her body was tense, her ears flicking at every faint sound. Ryan knelt beside her again, his voice low and reassuring. "You're safe here, girl. No one's going to hurt you." But as he looked into her eyes, he realized something unsettling. She wasn't just scared. She was trying to tell them something. The growls and whines weren't just warnings. They were pleas. Linda approached, her expression troubled. "I checked with dispatch," she said. "No reports of a lost dog matching her description. But there was a call about suspicious activity near the woods this morning." Ryan's brows furrowed. "What kind of activity?" "A man was seen loading something into the back of a truck," Linda explained. "The caller didn't stay on the line, though. No details." Ryan's stomach churned. "Let me guess. Black truck?" Linda nodded. "Sounds like it." The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, but the picture they formed was far from comforting. Ryan glanced at the dog again. Her ribs were faintly visible beneath her matted coat, and her fur was caked with dirt. This wasn't just a stray. Someone had neglected her, or worse. Just then, the station door creaked open. Dr. Patel, the town's veterinarian, stepped in carrying a medical kit. Her warm, calm demeanor immediately eased some of the tension in the room. "I hear you've got some special patients for me," she said, her eyes falling on the dog and her puppies. Ryan led her over. "She brought them in herself," he explained. "We've done what we could, but they're in rough shape." Dr. Patel knelt beside the dog, her touch gentle as she examined her and the pups. "She's dehydrated and exhausted," she said, "but no major injuries. The puppies are malnourished but seem okay for now. She's been doing everything she can to keep them alive." The mother dog seemed to relax under Dr. Patel's care, her eyes softening. But then, just as Ryan started to feel a glimmer of hope, the dog let out a low growl. Her body tensed again, her gaze fixed on the door. Ryan stood immediately, his hand hovering near his holster. "Something's not right," he said. Stay here with them. As he stepped outside again, his heart pounded in his chest. The black truck was still there, but now the unease in the air was impossible to ignore. Whatever this dog had escaped from wasn't just a bad situation, it was something far worse. And it wasn't over yet. Ryan stepped outside, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. The street was eerily still, the usual hum of the town replaced by a heavy, uneasy silence. His eyes locked on the black truck near the woods. Its engine was now off, but it remained parked ominously, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The dog's growl echoed faintly from inside the station, a reminder of the urgency he felt in his chest. Ryan's hand instinctively rested on his holster as he scanned the area, his senses on high alert. Then, movement. A man stepped out of the truck, his face obscured by a baseball cap pulled low over his brow. He was tall, with a rough, unkempt appearance, and his hands were shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. He took a step toward the station, his movements deliberate and unnervingly slow. Ryan raised his voice, in a steady and firm. "Can I help you?" The man didn't respond right away. He stopped a few yards away, tilting his head slightly as if sizing Ryan up. Finally he spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "I'm just here for what's mine." Ryan's chest tightened. "And what exactly would that be?" The man's lips curved into a cold, menacing grin. "The dog. She belongs to me." Ryan clenched his jaw. His gut had been right. This wasn't just a random incident. "If she belonged to you, she wouldn't be in the state she's in," he said, his voice hardening. "She came to us for help." The man's grin disappeared, replaced by a dark glare. "That's none of your business. Just hand her over, and I'll be on my way." Ryan stepped forward, putting himself firmly between the man and the station. "That's not going to happen. Turn around and leave, now." For a moment, the man didn't move. Then he took another step closer, his grin returning with an unsettling intensity. "You don't understand," he said, his tone chilling. "You're making a mistake." Before Ryan could respond, he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. Another man emerged from the woods behind the truck, carrying a metal crowbar. Ryan's hand went to his holster, his voice sharp. "Stop where you are." The second man froze, but the tension in the air was electric. Inside the station, the golden retriever's barks grew louder, sharp and frantic, echoing off the walls. Ryan's pulse quickened. This wasn't just about the dog. These men were up to something far darker. The station door creaked open behind him, and Linda stepped out, her voice urgent. "The SUV is ready," she said. Ryan didn't take his eyes off the men. "Good," he said, his voice low. "Get the dog and the pups loaded now." Linda hesitated. "What about them?" she asked, glancing toward the men. Ryan's gaze didn't waver. "We deal with them if we have to. Just move." Linda disappeared back into the station, and Ryan kept his stance firm, his hand hovering near his weapon. The first man took another step forward, his grin widening. "You really think you can stop us?" he sneered. Ryan didn't flinch. "Try me." Inside, Linda and Dr. Patel worked quickly. The puppies were wrapped in a blanket, their tiny bodies trembling but safe. The golden retriever, weak but determined, moved with purpose as Linda helped her to her feet. It was as if the dog knew this was her chance. The officers outside stood their ground, the standoff growing more intense with every passing second. As Linda and Dr. Patel loaded the dog and her puppies into the SUV, Ryan glanced over his shoulder to make sure they were secure. His jaw tightened as he turned back to the men. "You've got what you want to say," Ryan said coldly. "Now leave and don't come back." The two men exchanged glances, their expressions dark and calculating. Finally, they stepped back toward the truck, their retreat slow and deliberate, as if to send a message. Ryan didn't lower his guard until they climbed into the vehicle and drove off, the truck's tires kicking up dust as it disappeared into the woods. Ryan rushed back into the station, his pulse still racing. "Drive," he told Linda. "Don't stop for anything." The SUV sped away, carrying the dog and her puppies toward safety. Ryan watched it disappear down the road, a sense of relief washing over him. But it was fleeting. He knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Back inside, Ryan grabbed his radio and called dispatch. "We need backup to search the woods near the station," he said firmly. "There's evidence of illegal activity tied to that truck." Understood, came the response. Units are on their way. Ryan hung up and began pacing. His gut told him there was more to this story, something darker and more sinister than just a neglectful pet owner. The truck, the ropes, the blood. It all pointed to something far worse, and he was determined to find out what it was. The SUV sped down the quiet country road, the hum of its engine breaking the stillness of the morning. Linda gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white, her eyes darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. In the back seat, Dr. Patel sat with the golden retriever resting her head on her lap. The puppies were bundled together in a crate beside her, their tiny whimpers blending with the rhythmic sound of the tires on the pavement. "It's okay, girl," Dr. Patel whispered, stroking the dog's matted fur. "You're safe now." The golden retriever's eyes fluttered shut, her body finally relaxing after what must have been days of fear and exhaustion. The puppies stirred occasionally, snuggling closer to one another, comforted by their mother's presence. Linda glanced in the mirror again, her unease growing. "Do you think they'll follow us?" she asked, her voice tight. Dr. Patel hesitated, her gaze drifting to the golden retriever. "I don't know," she admitted, "but we need to get to the clinic quickly. She's weak, and the pups need care." As the SUV approached the veterinary clinic, Linda slowed down, scanning the area for any sign of the black truck. The coast seemed clear, but her grip on the wheel didn't loosen until they pulled into the parking lot. She parked close to the entrance, her senses still on high alert. "Let's move fast," Linda said, stepping out of the vehicle. Dr. Patel nodded, carefully lifting the crate with the puppies while Linda helped the mother dog out of the SUV. The golden retriever wobbled on her feet, her exhaustion evident, but she moved with purpose, her instincts overriding her fatigue. They hurried inside, the door clicking shut behind them. Inside the clinic, Dr. Patel worked swiftly. She examined the golden retriever, her hands gentle as she checked for injuries. The dog's body was covered in scratches and bruises, her paws raw from running. The puppies, though underweight, appeared unharmed. "She's been through a lot," Dr. Patel said softly, glancing at Linda. "But she'll recover. They all will." Linda nodded, relief washing over her. "Good. Now we just have to make sure those men don't come looking for her." Back at the station, Ryan reviewed the evidence he'd found in the truck. The ropes, the blood stains, the scratches. They told a story he didn't want to believe. His thoughts were interrupted by Officer Carl, who burst into the room, his face pale. "Ryan," Carl said urgently, "the truck's gone." Ryan's head snapped up. "What?" "They must have doubled back," Carl said, his voice laced with tension. "I checked the cameras. They left a few minutes after the SUV did, heading in the same direction." Ryan grabbed his radio, his pulse quickening. "Linda, it's Ryan. Do you copy?" There was a pause before Linda's voice crackled through. "I hear you." "They're heading your way," Ryan said, his tone sharp. "You need to get out of there. Now." In the clinic, Linda's face blanched as she heard Ryan's warning. "Dr. Patel, we need to move her," she said, her voice trembling. Dr. Patel didn't hesitate. She grabbed a transport crate and began gently placing the puppies inside, while Linda helped the golden retriever to her feet. The dog wobbled but managed to stand, her maternal instincts once again pushing her forward. Outside, the distant rumble of an engine grew louder. Linda's heart pounded as she peeked out the window. The black truck was coming up the road fast. "They're here," Linda said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to go now." Dr. Patel secured the crate in the back of her car and helped the mother dog climb in beside it. Linda jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine just as the truck pulled into the lot. The black truck's doors swung open, and the same man from earlier stepped out, his face twisted with anger. "You can't take what's mine," he shouted, moving toward the car. Linda didn't wait. She hit the gas, tires screeching as the car sped out of the parking lot. The truck's engine roared to life behind them, giving chase. In the rearview mirror, Linda saw the truck gaining on them. Her hands gripped the wheel tightly, her mind racing. "Hang on," she muttered, her foot pressing harder on the accelerator. Dr. Patel clutched the crate, her eyes wide with fear. The golden retriever let out a low growl, her protective instincts flaring even in her weakened state. The truck drew closer, its engine roaring like a predator closing in on its prey. Linda swerved onto a dirt path, the SUV bouncing as she tried to put distance between them. The truck followed, its tires kicking up clouds of dust. "They're not giving up," Dr. Patel said, her voice trembling. Linda clenched her jaw. "They won't get what they're after. Not today." Suddenly, the truck lurched forward, ramming into the back of the SUV. The impact sent the vehicle swerving, but Linda steadied it, her hands firm on the wheel. "Come on, girl," she muttered, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Just a little farther." In the distance, flashing red and blue lights appeared. Backup had arrived. The truck's driver saw the police cars and slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop. Two patrol cars blocked the road, and officers jumped out, weapons drawn. Ryan was among them, his face set with determination. "Out of the truck!" Ryan shouted, his voice booming across the field. The driver hesitated before stepping out, his hands raised. His accomplice followed, muttering curses under his breath. The officers moved quickly, handcuffing both men, while Ryan approached Linda's car. Linda stepped out, her legs shaking as the adrenaline coursed through her. "You have no idea how glad I am to see you," she said, her voice trembling. Ryan gave her a reassuring nod before peering into the back seat. The golden retriever lifted her head, her eyes meeting his. Despite her exhaustion, there was a flicker of relief in her gaze. "You did good, girl," Ryan said softly. He turned to Dr. Patel, who was still holding the crate. "Are they okay?" Dr. Patel nodded. "They'll need care, but they're going to make it. Thanks to her, and you." Ryan stepped back, watching as other officers secured the scene. The two men were loaded into the back of a patrol car, their faces sullen. "What were they after?" Linda asked. Ryan's expression darkened. "They were running an illegal dog-fighting ring," he said. "She must have escaped with her puppies. When they tried to force her back, she ran here because she had nowhere else to go." Linda's stomach churned. "And she trusted us." Ryan nodded. "Because she knew she had no choice." Dr. Patel looked at the golden retriever, tears in her eyes. "She's not just brave, she's extraordinary. She risked everything to save her pups." Ryan crouched beside the dog, gently stroking her head. "You're safe now," he said. "No one's going to hurt you or your babies ever again." The golden retriever let out a soft whine, her eyes closing as if she finally felt safe enough to rest. In the days that followed, the story of the golden retriever and her puppies spread like wildfire. The dog, now named Hope, became a symbol of resilience and courage for the entire town. Her journey to the police station, her unwavering determination to protect her pups, and the bravery she displayed in the face of danger captured everyone's hearts. Officer Ryan, who had taken a personal interest in her case, decided to adopt Hope. He promised to give her and her puppies the life they deserved. The puppies were placed in loving homes, each one receiving care and attention from families eager to welcome them. At the station, Hope quickly became a beloved mascot. She greeted visitors with her wagging tail and watched over the officers like they were her own pups. Her presence brought a sense of unity and purpose to the team. Every time someone walked through the doors, they were reminded of the power of kindness, bravery, and compassion. The illegal dog-fighting ring that had endangered Hope and her pups was dismantled. The two men who had pursued her faced justice for their crimes. The town rallied together, organizing fundraisers and awareness campaigns to combat animal cruelty and promote the importance of responsible pet ownership. One evening, Ryan sat on his porch, watching Hope play with her puppies in the yard. She seemed like a different dog now. Her fur was clean and glossy, her body strong and healthy. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now sparkled with joy. The puppies tumbled around her, their playful barks filling the air. "You did good, girl," Ryan said softly, his voice carrying a mix of pride and gratitude. "You saved them. You saved yourself. And you reminded us all what it means to be brave." Hope trotted over to him, her tail wagging, and rested her head on his knee. Ryan scratched behind her ears, a smile spreading across his face. In the background, the town was abuzz with life. Families walked by, children laughing and playing, their parents waving at Ryan. It was a small town, but moments like this made it feel like the heart of something much larger. At the veterinary clinic, Dr. Patel reflected on the golden retriever's story. "She's extraordinary," she told Linda, who had stopped by for a visit. "I've never seen a dog so determined, so full of love and fight." Linda nodded. "She trusted us, and now we owe it to her to make sure no other animal has to go through what she did. The clinic became a hub for change. Inspired by Hope's story, the community came together to volunteer, donate, and educate. Workshops were held on animal welfare, adoption drives were organized, and new laws were proposed to protect animals from abuse. Hope's story didn't just end with her rescue. It sparked a movement, a wave of compassion and change that rippled far beyond the town's borders. News outlets picked up the story, and soon people from all over the country were reaching out, wanting to help. Back at the station, a framed photo of Hope and her puppies was hung on the wall. Below it was a plaque that read, "In honor of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her children." Ryan looked at the photo every day as he walked into work. It reminded him why he became a police officer in the first place: to protect, to serve, and to make a difference. 1 year later, Hope had fully recovered. Her puppies had grown into strong, healthy dogs, each one thriving in their new homes. Hope herself remained a cherished member of Ryan's family, her bond with him unbreakable. On the anniversary of her arrival at the station, the town held a celebration in her honor. People gathered in the park, sharing stories, playing games, and raising funds for animal shelters. Hope sat proudly by Ryan's side, her tail wagging as children came up to pet her. As the sun set over the town, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ryan looked at Hope and smiled. "You're a hero, you know that?" he said. Hope tilted her head, her ears perking up, as if she understood every word. And in that moment, Ryan knew that her story wasn't just about survival. It was about hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of love. It was a story that would live on, inspiring others to stand up for what's right and to never give up, even when the odds seemed insurmountable.